views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Meetings with the Minds in partnership with BronxNet Television. My name is Sulma Arzu-Brown, and I'm the Director of Operations for the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Today, we explore how elected officials effectively work with community partners to bring much-needed resources to the people they serve. Councilmember Rafael Salamanca represents the 17th District in the Bronx. As an elected official, Councilman Salamanca has been committed to providing resources for his constituents. Despite his own personal challenges during COVID-19, he and his stellar team continued to make it their mission to make certain that District 17 of the Bronx was taken care of. Let's learn a little bit more about Rafael Salamanca. Hello, Council Member. How are you doing today?
How are you, Sulma? I'm doing well.
And how's the family? We always like to ask, La Familia número uno, how's La Familia?
Family, we're good, we're healthy, we're strong, so we're blessed.
Amen. And we'll get straight to it. Once again, thank you so much for being with us. You know, council member, everyone started 2020 with a goal. As a council member, what was the goal for you?
Well, you know, when we started 2020, you know, we were just wrapping up 2019. I had such a great year in 2019. I wrapped it up with one of the biggest bills that I was working on for almost 2 years in the council, which was a 15% homeless set aside, requiring every developer that's getting city subsidies, that's building affordable housing, that 15% of their units have to be allocated for homeless families that are ready for independent living. And so, you know, that was a great end of 2019, a great start of 2020. You know, we were focusing on other developments throughout the district that has to do with affordable housing, but ensuring that we're building for people in the community in the South Bronx without displacing them. You know, we were focusing on how to bring in jobs to the community, how to address our health disparities, you know, working hand in hand with our healthcare organizations. And of course, you know, how to address our food insecurities in the South Bronx. So, you know, we were focused, we were, you know, laser focus driven. And then COVID hit, you know? Right.
It seems like everyone was on a roll at the, you know, January, February, and going into March. And then we get these turns of events that affect pretty much every aspect of your work when it came to housing, jobs, and food. What was the most challenging part of readjusting with your goals during COVID-19?
There were a few things that were challenging when COVID hit. You know, immediately there was, I don't want to call it a disconnect, but we just could not, the interaction that we had, that one-on-one with our communities, you know, it stopped, you know, and we needed to learn how to do everything remotely. You know, dealing with my constituents, doing constituent services, having Zoom meetings, you know, my meetings all virtual. You know, I have a 5-year-old at home, and he was in kindergarten, and I went from, you know, just being a parent and doing homework with him to being a full-time educator, because now we were doing Zoom classes, you know, and we wanted to ensure that Aiden was on track with his education. But I think something that hit home the most with COVID was the fact of the loss that many of us had. You know, I lost my dad in April, and it was really hard and difficult, because my dad, he was staying at a senior home, not too far from where I live at, because my dad had dementia. And it was, you know, I got a call on a Wednesday that my dad tested positive for COVID. And that evening I got a call that he's being rushed to the hospital. And as much as I tried to rush to the senior home before they took him to the hospital, he was, you know, they already took him to Lincoln Hospital, and I just couldn't see him. And then I got a call on Friday to advise that my dad didn't make it, that he passed. And so what was really devastating, and it's not just for me, but for thousands of families of individuals that lost their families, is how our loved ones passed away without a loved one being with them, you know? Mm-hmm. And so that was extremely devastating. And it really made me, you know, sit back and really think about, you know, how can I use this loss to really help my communities? Right. But we remained active in the community. You know, we knew that people needed essentials. And in the very beginning of COVID, you know, we needed PPEs, we needed face masks, and the communities just did not have them. And so we focused on trying to get as many face mask donations as possible. And we started having drives where we were giving out face masks. But something that I noticed immediately, because so many people got laid off or furloughed immediately when COVID hit, was food insecurities. How many people were concerned that they were not going to be able to put a meal, you know, on their table for their families.
And
so,
Councilmember, before we continue on that, I want to definitely issue our deepest and most sincere condolences to you and your family. We knew about that even through the social media portals, and it couldn't be easy. And one thing that I noticed is that you did not stop serving the community in the process. It was still a priority for you. It was still a mission, although you weren't able, and many of us weren't able to be with our families during that time. You also had a bigger community of family that you were able to take care of. And for that, I just want to say that we are eternally grateful for you rising above this and still continue to have your heart for us. You know, we're going to talk about food, and we realize that you've partnered with I believe Fresh Direct and Baldor to make sure you get food to your community. How did you start those conversations, and is that something that you plan to continue?
Yeah, so when COVID hit, you know, and we realized that, you know, individuals in my communities were being laid off, and we've always had a food insecurity in our communities, right? We call them food deserts. We have the world's biggest food markets in the Hunts Point community, but yet we're one of the poorest communities, and you know, we have one of the least healthiest options to eat. You know, but before I was an elected official, I was a district manager of the community board, and I had built relationships with the owners and the business owners in the markets. And my dad actually worked in the Hunts Point produce market for 18 years, so you know, he was a local 202 member, so I knew them. And so when COVID hit, I made a few phone calls and I said, hey, I'm interested in doing some food drives. I didn't realize how the outpouring of support that I got. You know, starting at the end of March, we started to do food drives every Tuesday and Thursday throughout my entire district, and that has not stopped. And we're not planning on stopping. And I really want to thank all the business owners for understanding the needs in the South Bronx and really stepping up to the plate.
You mentioned that there was a food desert, especially in Hunts Point, and it's home to a market that feeds so much of the United States. Just building these partnerships during this time, are there conversations on how to not make this a food desert anymore, even post-COVID?
No, for sure. You know, prior to COVID, there were conversations on how to get healthier foods to individuals in the South Bronx, especially the Hunts Point and Longwood community. You know, working with organizations as Urban Health Plan and the Department of Health, you know, they started what's called a Healthy Bodega, where they would bring the healthier food options to the front of the bodega. So when you go in and instead of looking for candy, you see apples and vegetables and fruits. Bringing water, for example, to the eye level. So when kids go in to buy a soda, you know, normally when you go to a bodega and you want to buy waters in the back somewhere hidden in a nevera. Yeah. Well, bringing the water to the front and putting the soda to the back of the nevera where it's harder to see. You know, it's a way to help individuals if you're, you know, eat and eat healthier. And so with that work that they were doing in the past and now where COVID hit and building these relationships, but it's not just building these relationships and these businesses just giving us food and we giving it out. These businesses are coming out with us, you know, and they're standing with me as we're giving, and they're handing the food to the communities. They're seeing the long lines. every event we're feeding an average of 500 families, 500 people at an event. And so to see the owners of Baldor stand with me and see the need and say, whoa, Salamanca, this is real, and it has opened their minds as to the real need in Hunts Point and Longwood and the South Bronx as a whole. So I'm confident that as we move forward and we get better with this COVID, that the businesses are going to continue to step up because they personally saw the need in terms of food insecurities.
Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about discretionary funding. You are a council member and you get a lot of proposals for discretionary funds, right? The way we see it is the council members have the money for the community. But I wanted to know what kind of, are there going to be discretionary funding this time around during COVID? And if so, what type of proposals are you paying more attention to?
Yeah, we just passed the budget. Every city agency took a budget cut, and just to be clear, and that also means council members' discretionary funding also took a budget cut. But I'm blessed that I'm out of the 51 members. We have what's called the budget negotiating team. There's about 21 of us of the 51 that negotiate the budget, and I'm one of them. And so I'm on the table when decisions are being made. And so when we were talking about making budget cuts, we ensure that we prioritize bringing back summer youth workers, right? To ensure that the kids have something to do over the summer. We prioritize, we understood that there are certain organizations, because of COVID, they cannot function like they normally function. And so we needed to shift funding around to ensure that that funding is put in to communities and to organizations that could provide essential services right now, when the need is necessary for COVID. So we ensure that, we provided funding for technology, technology for the youth and for the seniors. We prioritize, believe it or not, we prioritize and make sure that there were no budget cuts to domestic violence funding. When COVID hit, because we're home, we've seen an increase in domestic violence. And so we wanted to ensure that these programs were not touched. There were, because there will be a need for it. And we also prioritize our funding for healthcare. We also, we saw that when COVID hit, our healthcare system was not ready. They didn't have proper PPEs, nurses wearing masks for 5 days in a row. And so we ensured that we prioritize our funding to ensure that our healthcare professionals have the protective equipment that they need to survive. But also, there were cuts. I try to be consistent with the way my funding was spread out throughout my district. So, and we protected a lot of programs, youth programs, environmental programs in my district, digital programs. And so, it was a very, very hard and difficult budget, but I think that could we have done better? Absolutely, we could have done better. But I think we did the best that we can with the circumstances that we were in.
Of course. Will are these discretionary funds still on a reimbursement level, or are you guys making the?
Yeah, that's just the way the city works. It's unfortunate, in the past there's been, individuals who have made really bad decisions, and so the city of New York has put in measures where it's a reimbursement, and that's just the way it works.
How can we, as Latinos, work better with our African American brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I mean, look, when we saw George Floyd, what happened with George Floyd, I can say that the world woke. This was something, we saw a Black man die in front of our eyes, and in the hands of, I would say, a corrupt police officer, and I say that because not all police officers are bad, we do have rotten apples in every agency, and we do have rotten apples, in our police precincts. But what's most important is for our communities to understand that we can work together with our police officers. And, the message also is to NYPD officers is that you know who your rotten apples are within your precincts, within your department. Those officers do not deserve to be officers. They need to be called out, and they should not be part of our police force. I learned as well through this Black Lives Matter, the injustices that people of color, especially Black people, have suffered throughout the years. This has been a learning experience for me.
Right.
You know, talking to my friends, but really talking to those that have been most affected, and most of all, educating myself, reading, following what's happening, seeing the injustices, whether it's at the hands of the police, whether it's at the hands of employment where you're not getting the jobs or you're not getting equal pay because of the color of your skin. You know, has been something that I am learning and I'm reading, and you know, I'm opening up my eyes, and I'm, as an elected leader, I'm also using what I'm learning to educate my peers or my communities who really are not in tune as to what's happening. But something that I can tell you that I've really been doing is that as I've gone to some of these events, like 2 days ago, we painted a Black Lives Matter mural by the courthouse in my district and Vanessa's district. I've been taking my 5-year-old son with me, and you know, he painted the mural, and you know, he was asking me, "Daddy, what does this mean?" And I think that it's important for us to educate our children as young as possible. So as they understand and as they grow, they're the ones who are going to change this world for us. So it's our responsibility to educate them. That's what I've learned throughout this process.
That's bold, that's courageous, and that's the right thing to do, because you know, they especially the youth, right? They're feeling so much, and to get them involved in something that is changing the world for the better, it does something to them. It plants that very important seed of, you know what, I was with my dad during this time, and I plan to continue that work. So congratulations on that, and I hope that more parents are taking this attitude. I hope that more parents are educating themselves and having the courage to educate others in the spirit of love and the right thing to do in the process. You know, we at the Chamber believe in mutually beneficial relationships. You're out there fighting for the people, the constituents, day in and day out. How can our community, how can we help support you so that you don't get tired, right? And understand that we are there with you.
I think the best way for you to support me is to educate me and tell me what your needs are. You know, small businesses, you guys, they're the staples of our communities, you know. You employ our communities. You give, you know, you not only do you employ, but through your employment, you build entrepreneurs within our communities. And that's what we want. And, you know, when we're talking about the economy, the only way the economy can thrive is by creating jobs. And people having jobs, they go to small businesses and they purchase locally. And, you know, we want to keep that money within our communities. Yeah. And the best way to do that is supporting our businesses, especially our small businesses. You know, I'm not here to throw shade at big chain stores, but to be quite frank, it is our small businesses, the businesses of color, who keep our communities intact, thriving, and help us become entrepreneurs.
Thank you again for being with us. Well said, well stated. As you know, I think you and I pretty much grew up together and matured together, and were able to take in as much as we could from our community, take all the good with the bad, and figure out a way to just make it better for all of us. I am so happy to call you my friend, a friend of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and we appreciate your time. You know, we're here for you. Anything you need, you know, we're just a phone call away. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great seeing you. Okay, God bless.
Great seeing you. Saludos a la familia.
Thank you.